Hey guys, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about how to gear, and what we're going to do is I have a bunch of New World database pages pulled up where we're going to talk about basically how I go about doing my gear. I'll show you a couple of notable unique perks that to look out for on certain pieces, and yeah, just give you my philosophy of how I go about gearing. So the first thing that I want to talk about really quickly is go over here on the perks. Some of the slots that can drop is gem slot, a skill slot, a defense slot, and an offense slot. The only one of these that I would say is 100% mandatory no matter what is going to be a gem slot. Right now, when it comes to armor, defense slot is then the next thing that I look for. So gem, the most important thing, because gems are damage absorption and it's better than any other type of damage mitigation, right? That's absorption. Whether you're taking 50 damage or 50 million damage, if you have 10% absorption, no matter what the damage is, it'll always reduce it by 10%. So always look for a gem slot. So in armor specifically, I'm always looking for a defense slot. This allows me to put something on it like an enchanted ward, an Ellie version, a freedom, a divine, something like that. Now, when we actually move on to the actual fixed perks, because there are fixed perks, ones that are good ones to look out for, that are just default good to look out for, will be your shirking fortification, one of your conditionings, depending on the build, and one that's been, and then a couple actually that have been piquing my interest a little bit lately has been sacrificial empowerment for certain builds, and also prolonged favor for other builds that are very buff reliant. A lot of the other perks are very build dependent. For example, Lifestealer's Draught is very build dependent, but it is good. And then you have like ones that I would avoid, like Freeing Aggression. I don't really like the idea of this one because active crowd control, you can't hit someone when you're stunned. When someone roots you, they're typically out of range, and then if it's a slow, you typically just let melee tracking hit them anyway, right? And if you're ranged, you typically have a form of cleanse. Now, we'll talk about each individual piece, and I'll talk to you about the ones that I would tell you to look out for and stay away from if they're bad. The unique one to helmets is Critical Retribution, which is the gaining crit chance when you take a crit. This one, I would say only keep it if you have a very crit-based build. And then you also have Quick Revive, which is you gain grit while you're reviving someone. This is a very PvE open world kind of a perk. You don't always need it in PvE, but let's say you're like running, catacombs or something, and you just want to res someone really quickly. It can be done there, or open world PvE, but just keep those in mind. Moving on to the chest plate, similar perk pool here, but the two that are unique to the chest plate as well is Vital Synergy and Sturdy Energy. Sturdy Energy is the stamina after when you're the stamina regen when you block when you're low stamina. I would only use this if I was playing Sword and Shield or Flail and Shield as a full tank, but other than that, I wouldn't worry about it. Vital Synergy is the one perk on the armor that I'm going to tell you, get it at all costs, okay? I'm a big fan of Vital Synergy. I love the perk. I used it all of last season. It is amazing. Get it. Now moving on to the gloves. The unique ones over here would be Empowering Breaker, Breaker Bypass, and Purifying Switch. Empowering Breaker is when your attacks are blocked, you gain Empower. Not really necessary. Most builds can hit Empower cap very easily without taking up a perk slot by this. Purifying Switch is when you swap your weapons and then you hit someone with an ability, you cleanse 1 debuff, 6-second cooldown. Not good enough. 1 debuff, this could just cleanse you of something that's irrelevant. It could just cleanse a rune glass tick off of you. So I don't think that's worth a perk slot, and especially since the cooldown is so long of 6 seconds. I know that sounds short, but for an effect like that, it's long. And then we have Breaker Bypass, where when your attack is blocked, you gain a stack of stamina damage for 4 seconds. Now, this is an interesting perk because it doesn't say PvP only. So I'm curious, would this work in PvE against mobs that have like a stamina bar or a block break mechanic? If any of you have tried that or you've tested it, let me know. Because I'm actually curious about that, because this could be very useful for that. Now, for PvP, would this be useful against like mainly sword and shields blocking? Unknown. I don't know if it's actually, obviously it does something. I don't think it's worth the perk slot, because most of the people that would take this perk typically already do no stamina damage. That would be ranged weapons, and it's not worth your time to be hitting a sword and shield. And then any of the melee weapons that would be hitting them, great axe, warhammer, great sword, sword and shield, they already have really good stand break, so they don't need it. So I would say this would be only if for PvE, if a boss has a block break mechanic, and this actually helps. Now, moving on to the pants, we have two interesting ones. One being Shirking Energy, which is you gain stamina when you dodge in either light or medium. You have to dodge an attack. I think Shirking Energy is really good. This one isn't quite Vital Synergy level of good, where I would say it's 100% mandatory, but it's pretty damn good, where if you get it, I would not be, like if I got it, I would not be upset whatsoever if I got this one. I think Shirking Energy is really nice if you can afford to put it into your build of light armor or medium. Stamina is very important. Right? We talked about gems earlier about damage reduction, but nothing reduces more damage than an iframe and not being able to be hit. And then the next pants perk is going to be Terminal Vengeance. This is you gain 4% increased base damage for every 25% of your max health missing. I'm not a big fan of this one. I would say that like Hatchet is the only weapon that comes to mind when using this one. Yeah, not a fan of it. It's too narrow, and then you're also put at very, very high risk at the moment with all the range DPS that are going around that they could just one-shot you. So I would say probably not Terminal Vengeance. And then for the boots, the locked-in perk is Hardcore Parkour. This is you gain haste after you trigger a traversal action. That's basically when you climb over something, you mantle over something, you get haste. I think this is a really good perk for Capture the Flag. And then there's certain open world instances, and then like I think one of the 3v3 maps this is good for. Outside of that, probably not worth your time. Now, for the rest of the fixed perks, is there anything that stands out of like, oh my god, get this? Not really, other than Vital Synergy. That's the main one that I would say, yes, get at all costs. I could give you examples of other ones. If you wanted to play like a stand in the back, very low con, high DPS caster, you could consider Sacrificial Empowerment. If you are very buff favored build, you could do Prolonged Favor. Conditionings are always a solid pick. They may not be perfect BIS, but they're always solid. Shirking Fort, a lot of people are taking right now. I would say it's best in medium builds that like to frontline and dodge. And then Mortal Aggression is just like a nice perk that if you're in something like OPR and you're playing a very kill-heavy build, this is a benefit that's really nice. I like this. I'm going to put this in one of my builds. So there are things to take into consideration when looking at all those armor perks, but make sure that all your armor has at least the gem slot. That is mandatory no matter what you do. Gem slot, gem slot, gem slot. And that applies to jewelry and weapons as well. And speaking of jewelry, let's move on to the amulets. The amulets have the similar perk bucket here with the gem slot, skill slot, defense, and offense. What these roll with basically is based on what your needs are. Same with the weapons as well. Just what do you need, right? And that's what you would put there. Let's talk about the fixed perks on the amulet. So what do I think is the most important on an amulet? The protections, because these are absorption, right? These are 10% absorption when you're at 800 gear score, and you always want to have 2. Yep, you can have 2 now. Now, realistically, you can have 3, and actually I've seen an amulet with 4. But you always want to have gem slot, so that one's locked, and then you want 2 protections. Right now in the meta, I would advise, depending on your build, you would want thrust protection because of all the range DPS, and then slash protection because there are 4 slash weapons in the game, between the great axe, between the hatchet, between the great sword. And I'm bricking on the last one. But daggers will be coming out, and that will be a slash weapon as well. So, yeah, sword and shield, hatchet, great axe, great sword. I don't know why I forgot I don't know why I forgot one of those as I was saying it, but anyway, yeah, slash protection is good, and then thrust is also good for all the ranged DPS. And then if you're worried about fire staff still, you shouldn't be, but if you are, you just gem elemental. But you can have a third protection, so I would always try to get, if possible, right, your Bis Amulet would be gem slot, 3 protections, and then an open slot. Now, with the other fixed perks here, Unimpeded, Stop, Drop, and Roll, Shirking Cleanse, Fortified Recovery, Purify, and Stam Recovery, the only one that I've seen anyone really talk about having any real value would be the Shirking Cleanse. This one's interesting, where if you're in light or medium and you dodge an attack, you lose 2 debuffs, but I'm not 100% sure if I like this perk or not. I'm 50-50 on it. It sounds good, but then similar to the argument I made earlier, if all this does is cleanse rune glass dots off of me, but I still keep the rends, I still keep the diseases, I don't want it. And the rest of them are just not good enough right now. So look for the protections on the amulet, and then there's health down here, but other than if you're just making a very heavy health stack, I wouldn't bother with health. I would look for the protections and then a gem slot, and then you know, probably one of the other sockets if you're doing an amulet. Now, rings are very interesting because rings did also get a bunch of new perks on there. We'll talk about some of them individually because a lot of them are build dependent. But I will say, again, rings do have a very important thing, and that is damage types. Grab the damage type of the weapon you're doing. So for example, I have a blunderbuss over here because we're going to show that off later. That's the weapon that I like to play. So I want my ring to have a gem slot and then fire damage and then thrust damage. Those are the 2 damage types of the blunderbuss. So that's what I want. But if you're playing like Boltcaster, you could consider lightning. If you're playing one of the new poison shot dot builds with bow, you could consider thrust and nature. If you're a life taker musket, you could do thrust and void. You know, there's a lot of options in there. Let's say you're a bruiser and you want your Deado to hit hard, you could do slash and arcane. You have options. Now, of the newer perks in here, we have a couple of interesting ones. There's a lot of back and forth with a few of them, which we'll talk about here with the cursed ones. Cursed skill is basically your abilities do more, but your basic attacks do less. Cursed enchantment is basically your basic attacks do more, but your abilities do less. That one is 100% build dependent, right? Do you care about your abilities more? Take this one. Do you care about your autos more? Take this one. Pretty straightforward. Then you have Unscathed Empowerment, where melee light attacks grant a stack. Melee heavy attacks grant 2 of Empower. But when you take a hit, the Empower is removed. I don't like this. This is good for like PvE if you want to stack Empowerment, because hopefully the boss is not hitting you. But for PvP, if you're melee, you're getting hit. Okay? Not useful. Rogue Alacrity is a new one, where if you backstab a target with active haste, you remove the haste and you give haste to yourself. So this is an interesting trying to catch someone kind of build. If someone's haste stacking and you're more of an assassin play style, and basically you're trying to catch like a ranged dex player, you could consider it. It's an interesting one. One to keep in mind. And if you're having trouble catching someone, you could use that one. Mortal Strike is when you kill a target, your next ability within the next 20 seconds will deal 18% more damage. This is basically if you kill someone and then you have a very impactful ability that you want to use. It could be interesting. I've tested it with a couple weapons, and it does what it needs to. I just don't think it's good enough, depending on the build, though. And then we have Purging Infliction, where hitting a target affected by one of your dots will reduce dots on you. I'm not a big fan of this. Just have Desert Sunrise, and, I wouldn't waste the ring perk on that. Critical Infliction is that you gain crit chance against a target that has active dots on them. That would be good for like a Fire Staff build or a Void Blade build, because you apply dots with that. So you could consider Critical Infliction. On top of that, then you also have enchanted attacks, where just your light and heavies do more, enchanted skills, your abilities do more, and then you have enchanted totality, where just both do more. Those are pretty straightforward, right? Just take those into consideration. I would say pick one of them if you are able to, and if you do get one of them, they're worth keeping. And then finally, We have Keen Switch, where on weapon swap, you get crit chance. You gain crit chance. I'm not a big fan of this one because it's just crit chance. You still may not crit. And I guess also there's this one. When you remove a debuff from an ally, you heal. This is basically reworked Purifying. It's called Purifying Mend. This would be for yourself. There's only a handful of builds that will actually want this one. So, keep that in mind. So I would say for a ring, you want to look for gem slot and then damage type here. And then just read some of these perks. And if they fit your build, take them. If not, take one of the empty slots. And then finally, moving on to the earring. This one has not a lot of them. So we can quickly go over all these. I would say that the ones what I would lock in is gem slot. Past that, it is very build dependent. Okay. All of these, I think, have a place somewhere, and some are also very preference based. So very quickly going over them. Despised, you get more aggro, but you deal more damage. Tanks. Beloved, you generate less threat, and you deal more damage to the taunted foes. The DPS, right, of PvE. Pretty straightforward. Healing Heart is when you activate your Heart Rune. You get, I believe it's 10% at max. It's 9. 9% of your health over 3 seconds. So if you are constantly fighting, and let's say you want to pop your stone form and get extra regen, Healing Heart. Fortifying Toast, you get fortified when you drink a potion. Pretty straightforward. Empowering Toast, you gain empower when you drink a potion. Again, pretty straightforward. Do you want either of those effects? Refreshing Toast is it reduces your potion cooldown by 8%. Again, do you want your potions back faster? There you go. Nimble, stamina regen. Do you want stam regen? Regenerating. Do you want health regen? This is one of the ones that I will tell you, I always lock in regenerating for me. But some other people are not a fan of regenerating. That's okay. As I said, these are very build dependent. Refreshing Recovery. This is when your health goes below 50%. All your active cooldowns are reset on a 1-minute cooldown. Some people actually do really like this. I'm not a fan of it, but some people do build around it. So if you do like it, use it. Refreshing Move. This is your light attacks. This is your light attacks reduce your cooldowns by 0.8%, and then heavies reduce it by even more. I very much like Refreshing Move on my earring because that goes with Blunderbuss because it is very good with my cooldown reduction. And then there's just regular Refreshment. I don't know why they didn't just keep it the name Refreshing, but and that is just CDR. So the earring is very build dependent. If you guys were curious what is my BIS earring, the locked perks that I would always want is a gem slot, refreshing move, and regenerating. Those are the 3 that I specifically am looking for. But your build may want something different. Now moving on to the weapons. Weapons have a lot of stuff that they could have locked onto them. And so we're not going to cover every single one. I will talk about the blunderbuss first, and then we'll go back a page to show you other stuff. But there's a lot of perks on here, right? You'll see even things like Mortal Aggression that was on armor you could have here. These weapons can also have the empty skill slots on them as well. Skill slots, defense slot, offense slot. Offense slot is what I would look for on weapons, or skill slot depending on the weapon, but still always gem. But yeah, a lot of these will be build dependent, right? You have your Sundering Stacks, your Desperate Empowers, your attunements. A lot of people like the attunements. Plague crits, thorn encounters. But this is also a ranged weapon. This is the blunderbuss, right? So this is, something that you have to think about is what goes well with your weapon. And so real quick, we can, we probably have to do it from this page. Yep. So we could look at, let's look at something like a Great Axe, because I know a lot of people do like this on their Great Axe right now that they've been talking about. Is End. This is a perk that this is only melee weapons. You can see in there compatible with flail, sword, rapier, spear, warhammer, greatsword, hatchet, great axe. Right? These are things to consider. Going over every single weapon perk, this would be a 1-hour video, but a lot of these are very build dependent. Just think about, when it comes to the weapons, think about how you play the weapon. Right? So for the example, I pulled up the blunderbuss. This is the weapon I know the best. I always want a gem slot, and we will talk about the infixes in 1 second. But if you do not have an infix, it will always be gem slot. It will always be offense slot, because this is what I will put my enchanted on. And then it will be triple attunement, right? You can have 3 attunements, and that is the best that you could get. And that works the best with the weapon. So then you may ask, why not Keen Speed? Why not Life Stealing, Sundering, Desperate, Disdained, Thwarting Counter, Play Crits? They are just not good enough with the playstyle of the BB, Close Range Burst. And that's what those perks give me. Now, for the last little bit here of this video, so we don't want to have the 1 hour video, we will talk about some infixes. Now, each weapon has very interesting infixes on them. Very specific to like certain types, because you can see like Critical Storm here, it shows like the compatibility and stuff like that. But there are some that are only compatible with certain weapons, like this one right here, Close Quarters, only compatible with bow, musket, hatchet, blunderbuss. No idea why it's compatible with the hatchet. Hatchet is not a ranged weapon. That is a melee weapon with ranged capability, and there's quite a few of those. So that one I don't know about that one. But that is one of the infixes. If we go to the blunderbuss, that I will be looking for, there's Close Quarters. And so with the infixes for these, you basically want to read them and see, do they work well with your weapon? So for example, Close Quarters blunderbuss, light and heavy attacks with ranged weapons within 10 meters, deal 20% extra damage, but you receive 5% increase attacker base damage. But the trade-off is just that good. 20% extra base damage if you guys play during the Nature's Wrath meta. That's what Nature's Wrath gave you. And this time you get to have full empower cap. So it is just that good. And that is, guys, how I would go about gearing. I know there's still probably a lot of questions you guys will have. I tried to make this very quick, give you a generalization. Again, I didn't want to make like a 1 hour video on this, because let's be real. How long is this? This is about like a 20-minute video. Some of you probably already don't want to watch a 20-minute video. Let's not make it an hour. So we'll just leave it at that. If you guys have any questions, leave it in the comments below. I will try to answer them as soon as possible. I do also stream every single day, twitch.tv/andv with 3 V's. The link will be in the description. Feel free to stop by and ask me some questions about your gear. I'm happy to answer it. Or if you want to leave a comment as well, I will answer it as soon as possible. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.